loud. Yeah? For example, using the character Fu, good luck, yeah? which we use now at New Year's, yeah? Or the good luck upside down, Fu Dao, yeah? That is superstition, yeah? That was not allowed. Yeah? So that was had big consequences when Rome decided not to allow it. Yeah? But we must not judge too easily. It was a very, very difficult question to decide. Yeah? They did not just do it, take it too light. It's not true. Yeah? After this decision was taken, the whole atmosphere of the emperor, of the intellectuals in China changed towards Christianity.
Emperor Kangxi was outraged. This is like judging the internal affairs of people in front of their own doors. He said, "Who can believe this?" Behind this was an ideological confrontation between China and the West. Thus, the differences in civilizations became a dispute over rights and beliefs. Emperor Kangxi was in a position to protect China's traditional culture, and he decided to completely ban Christianity. In 1723, all Christian missionaries in China were expelled. Communication is the initial base of mutual trust. In August 1905, the first Universal Esperanto Congress was held in Bologna, France. A total of 688 Esperantists from over 20 countries participated. The inventor of Esperanto was a Pole named Zamenhof.
柴门霍夫出生在一个犹太人的家庭，他的邻居里面有德国日耳曼人，有波兰人，还有俄罗斯人。这些人信仰不同，语言不同，来自不同的文化，那么他们也会经常发生争斗。
So, the common communication was not that easy, and I believe this very complex language situation gave Zamenhof the idea of creating a new language, which could, go over the borders.
In addition to their mother tongue, people should learn a common language to communicate with and understand each other. With this as his ideal, Zamenhof began to study languages as a boy, and by high school he had mastered Polish, German, Russian, Greek, Latin, French, English, and more. Then, at the age of 16, he began to create an international language. In 1878, he worked out the initial program for Esperanto, but it ran into all sorts of opposition. Under pressure, his father burnt his Esperanto manuscripts.
柴门霍夫呢，在上大学选择的时候也是选择了医科，毕业之后呢，他就成为了一个医生。当然，他一直没有放弃他的理想，一边行医，一边继续去完善他的世界语的方案。最终是在1887年的7月份，柴门霍夫以希望者博士这样一个名义，自费出版了他的世界语第一书，向社会公布了他的世界语方案。
Although globalization has brought about a mixture of disasters and benefits, human rationality has shown a natural vigilance against all possible dangers, including threats to languages. From the time Columbus encountered the Americas, the Portuguese, Spanish, French and English languages spread to all corners of the world wave after wave, following the colonialists. But there were corresponding upheavals of national liberation movements, with each nationality striving to maintain the independence of its own language. The Esperanto movement tries to transcend national chauvinism. It hopes to realize the equality of all the world's peoples by promoting global communication and cooperation, pursuing mutual understanding to achieve world peace.
「それは同一の言語にするという機能的な意味とね、それから本来言語が持っている歴史的文化的精神的なそのオリジナリティというか独創性はですね別のものです。したがって言葉がいくら共通でもですね、その人の人格なりその人の思想哲学その人の文化というものはその民族性や歴史に基づいていますから、これは消えることではないですね。
Different languages, along with the histories and cultures behind them, will continue to coexist for the foreseeable future. There's no exact figure for how many languages exist in the world. Research shows there are currently over 400 written languages, but over 90% of the world's people use less than 100 languages, and Chinese characters are among them. The creation of Esperanto has no doubt provided a useful experiment and a possibility for realizing the ideal of human equality and convenient communication. But due to various factors, Esperanto's progress has been far from ideal, and the language problem in international relations is still one of the challenges for humanity. An artificial international language's scientific nature helps raise efficiency of human communication, but it will be a long process of exploration to unify the international community to accept an auxiliary language in international communication. In the spring of 2007, a world conference on sinology with the theme Dialogue of Civilizations and a Harmonious World was held in Beijing. A total of 140 Chinese scholars and 70 foreign sinologists gathered for extensive dialogue about problems of the image of China and international publicity for Chinese language. Meanwhile, a missing persons notice from Columbia University in the United States attracted public attention. Dean Lung had been lost from 101 years ago. The year 1901 might have been the most humiliating in modern Chinese history. On September the 7th of that year, an international protocol was signed between the Qing government and 11 invading powers. But in the same year, on the other side of the world, a man named Horace Carpentier donated US $100,000 to the president of Columbia University. He wrote, "I sincerely donate to you a sum of money to set up a department of Chinese language, literature, religion, and law, and I wish it to be named the Chair of Chinese in honor of Dean Lung." This is the first time the name Dean Lung appears in historical records. Why did a US industrialist donate money to set up a Chinese department in the name of a Chinese man?
Carpentier's early life, which was distinguished in terms of amassing a fortune and being the director of banks, founding director of the Bank of California, being a founding mayor of the city of Oakland. But we also hear that there was a great deal that was very, sort of swashbuckling, as we say, and daring and reckless and maybe unscrupulous in the way in which Carpentier went about gaining his fortune.
In 1870, Carpentier hired a laborer from China as his valet. His name was Dean Lung. Dean was a quiet person who was friendly toward his neighbors and their children, and his tasks included picking up guests at the railroad station and going to the village shop to buy oysters and clams. But then one day Carpentier got very drunk, and in a rage he dismissed all his servants. The next morning, Carpentier awoke mortified to what he thought would be an empty house. He felt very upset and was uncertain about the future.
But Dean Lung had stayed, and he brought him up his breakfast as usual. And he was very impressed by this and said, you know, why would you have left? Why wouldn't you have left after I, treated you so poorly? And Dean Lung said to him, well, it's not in my training, and my Confucian training teaches me to be loyal, and I cannot leave you suddenly like this.
Generosity and benevolence were ingrained deeply in every Chinese person steeped in Chinese traditional culture. What Dean Lung took for granted captivated his tyrannical US boss. And from that time on, Carpentier no longer took Dean as a valet to be ordered about, but as a new friend to be trusted for life. In his old age, Carpentier asked Dean Lung what he wanted as a reward for so many years of loyalty. Dean Lung said that it was his hope Americans would come to know more about China and its civilization.
Well, as far as we can tell from the archival records, Dean Lung's gift, together with Horace Walpole Carpentier's gift, together provided the earliest fund, as it was called, for Chinese learning at Columbia. As I understand, it was Carpentier who went on to petition that some portion of those funds be used to create a professorship, an endowed professorship, in the name of Dean Lung.
Dean Lung himself had also donated money to the fund, writing, "Sir, I send you herewith a check for US $12,000 as a contribution to the fund for Chinese studies at your university. Respectfully, Dean Lung, a Chinese person." For Dean Lung, this was a large proportion of his assets, if not his entire savings. According to the then official price of gold, US $1 was worth 1.37 grams of gold. Today, that amount of gold would be worth something like $500,000 US. In his letter to the president of Columbia University in July 1901, Carpentier wrote, "I am not a Chinese, nor a descendant of a Chinese, nor a defender of cruel and backward China. Its rule is evil, has made it stagger in its progress. But for us, it's time to understand more about the 700 million people living in that East Asian country and its surrounding islands."
The very last record in the Columbia archives on Dean Lung would have been a letter that was written by the president of Columbia, Nicholas Murray Butler, to Carpentier, in which he implies that he knows that Dean Lung had returned to China. He didn't know whether he was just visiting or if he returned for good.
No one had told this kind-looking Chinese man to do what he did. Though we cannot make out his exact Chinese name from the English materials, it is clear that he was a child nurtured by a great culture and a voluntary envoy of an ancient nation. "100 years has passed. China, after much suffering, is finally able to offer services to Chinese learners worldwide. This marks historic progress, an impressive leap forward." The words of the missing persons notice may also accurately express the stated objective of the Confucius Institutes. What Dean Lung donated was money, but more importantly, he contributed his vision and ideals. The purpose of our institute is to establish a means of understanding and dialogue in a world often marred by conflict and confrontation. Some 2,500 years ago, Confucius considered going to sea on a bamboo raft. But in fact, he never left China. After 2,500 years, this ancient philosopher's wish has become a reality. In March 2004, when China decided to set up teaching institutes to promote the Chinese language overseas, it made a special point of using the simple yet significant name, Confucius Institutes.
所以，对中国的文化，我们讲它的精髓，那么是一种包容的文化，是一个主张以人为本、主张文明多元共生的这样的一种文化，也就是它是一种和谐的文化。所以随着中国的经济实力的不断的提升，那么大家全世界都在看中国崛起以后是不是一个和平的力量，是不是一个对世界文明有建设性的一个力量。所以我们的孔子学院向全球的这样的一种推广，与中国的汉语向全球的这样的一种传播，就是为了让世界更多的人了解中国传统文化的和谐精神和和谐理念，这个对于未来和谐世界的建设会铺平道路。
On December the 18th, 2008, for China's 30th anniversary of the introduction of its opening up and reform policies, the People's Daily newspaper included the setting up of the Confucius Institutes among the top 10 events in science, education, culture, sports and healthcare during the previous 30 years. What follows is a dialogue 2,500 years ago between Confucius, the creator of Confucianism, and one of his disciples. Zhigung asked, "Is there one word which may serve as the rule of practice for all one's life?" The master replied, "Is not reciprocity such a word? What you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others." Why do we want to impose on others what we don't want imposed on ourselves? Perhaps the others Confucius referred to could be expanded to cover everything in the universe. This is the essence of benevolence in China's Confucian culture.